Do museums still need objects? Over the course of this semester, no other question has stuck in my craw quite like this one. Rainey Tisdale's article asks the same question specifically to the History Museum, and I can't help but wonder if we, and by we I mean the museum community as a whole, are poking this bear because we recently, semi-successfully, endured a pandemic where most museums relied on digital education programs. I guess the answer depends on who you ask. As for me and my museum, we know where we stand.
I am Jonathan Bernstein, and I am the Arms and Armor Curator for the National Museum of the Marine Corps.
Okay, my name is Bruce Allen. I'm one of the museum specialists here at the National Museum of the Marine Corps.
Do museums still need objects?
Of course. Without objects, we're not a museum. It's that simple. Yes, there are online museums, and you can convey certain things without actually having a physical object there. But when you look at those things, those online museums, they're still talking about objects. They're still talking about stuff that they may have that the visitor can't see in person, but they're still viewing it online. So without objects, we're not a museum, or it's not really a museum. You can read about Dan Daly's Medals of Honor, 2 of them, all day. But in the National Museum of the Marine Corps, you can actually walk up to the case and see the 2 hand-engraved medals there, and these supporting labels that detail the 2 actions where he earned the Medal of Honor. I mean, that's pretty spectacular.
It's not a museum without artifacts.
Yeah, I think the argument is, and I think we've talked about this before, but the museum visitor gets a feeling, a more emotional feeling when they're in the presence of an object, as opposed to seeing it on a screen. And I think this all came about because of COVID and all the digital programming that came about.
And the museum does have some examples of swords that who knows who they belong to. It's just basically a standard example, or standard sample, however you want to put it. But when you get into the more famous people, and a good example is this sword right here. This is the sword that General Lejeune carried when he was at the Naval Academy. So you get that much more visceral, you feel more of a connection that it's not just, oh, that's a sword, that's John Lejeune's sword. And you can feel it can raise the hair up on your arms, give you goosebumps when you know that was held in their hands, that they carried that. So it brings you closer to the person that you're learning about.
In Nina Simone's The Participatory Museum, we are introduced to the idea that objects in a museum are social, in that they are the engines of socially networked experiences, the content around which conversation happens. They focus the visitor's attentions and make them more comfortable. They are often the most beloved aspects of a museum visit.
The Iwo Jima flag. That flag represents a moment in Marine Corps history that is unparalleled. And the fact that people can walk into the Iwo Jima gallery, or the Iwo Jima section of the World War II gallery, and see the photos of the flag raising, see video of the flag raising, and see the actual flag there is a hugely poignant moment, and it really conveys a whole bunch of historical information in a very, very short, brief period of time.
Curators know that their job is essential to the success of a museum, but they also know it is imperative that they work very closely with museum educators to ensure their education programs are enriched with objects that help tell a story and educate at the same time.
Objects that tell a story. When it comes down to it, and I say this all the time, but when it comes down to it, we're storytellers. We tell stories through objects, and the ability to do that instead of just having a generic object on exhibit really helps the education piece of things much better. It gives that human connection. It makes it more digestible for the visitor or for the student to really make a connection with.
How important is the relationship between the curator and the museum educator?
It's incredibly important. I know, I having worn both hats and several others. At the last museum I was at before here, I was the educator and I was the curator and I was the director. So I was literally tailoring educational programming for the soldiers that I was training, specific to their occupational specialty, and using the object within the collection to show them the history and evolution of technology of their profession. So yeah, absolutely. They need to, the historians and the educators need to work hand in hand in order to best convey the message that the museum's trying to put forth, and the history contained therein.
The Museum Educator Manual highlights an important lesson about active learning. Anna Stewart once said, "A museum educator is someone that aids in exploration and discovery. There is no better way to aid that discovery by giving museum visitors, especially children, the opportunity to interact fully with objects in your collection." This is where the relationship with the educator and the curator can really shine. The Educator's Manual talks about the notion of object play. Object play is interaction with toys, tools, or other objects. Providing hands-on artifacts in a rich learning environment permits children to make a tangible connection to the past.
The ability to give people that tactile experience is really important. And we do have a few pieces from the Arms and Armor collection that are tangible to visitors. We have actually 2 rifles that are on display that are anchored in exhibits that are specifically designed to be handled. And yeah, making that connection, that physical connection with an artifact, or a non-accessioned, on the Army side, we used to call them historic non-artifacts. But those things really do help improve the visitor's experience. We used to have a living history team when I was at the Air Defense Artillery Museum, and we had a running World War II anti-aircraft half-track that we brought out to events, and people could see and smell and touch the half-track and learn about what the crews did during World War II and everything, and that really was one of our biggest positive programs. Really had the best feedback and everything from all we did.
Tisdale's article points out that museums may need objects now more than ever. In the digital age, Americans long for authenticity. They feel that their lives had become so crazy, so complicated, so unreal that they were seeking something real and authentic in their lives. And they are finding that in museums. Subsequently, seeing all that museums have to offer on a digital display is making them want to see the real objects in person even more. So while I can see why the museum professional community would be compelled to ask the question, do we need objects? I am certain they only meant to raise the issue in a worst-case scenario type situation. Perhaps they are really asking, if my museum was closed to the public forever, could our organization thrive on digital content alone? The answer to that, my friends, is probably not very long. Thank you.
There it is. Rock it back, lock it down, function check. Good to go.